Hello, thank you for visiting this training video hosted by DXC Technology. Today, I'm going to show you how to enroll a new group in the Provider Management module for Vermont Medicaid. Before we begin, please note that this video is for informational purposes only and does not guarantee approval of your enrollment in Vermont Medicaid. If you have further questions regarding Vermont Medicaid's enrollment criteria, please contact the Enrollment Department at DXC Technology at 802-879-4450, option 4, or you can email us at vtproviderenrollment@dxc.com. For today's presentation, I'm going to start on the homepage of the Provider Management module. You can access the link to the Provider Management module by visiting www.vtmedicaid.com and click on the Enrollment tab. So to begin a new enrollment, I'm first going to click on the menu button that's located on the top left-hand corner of the screen. Under that, I'm going to hover over Provider Enrollment, and I'm going to choose New Enrollment. The first thing that pops up is our welcome page. This welcome page is designed to give you a little more information on the information you're going to need to provide to us in order to complete your application. Below the welcome greeting is an enrollment pre-checklist. This is not a mandatory pre-checklist, but it is designed to give you more information on specific documentation that you may need to complete your application by entering in enrollment type and a provider type so you can be prepared when you're filling out your application. Again, this is not required, but if you would like to use this, it is definitely a great tool in order to make sure that you have everything you need prior to beginning your application. When you're ready, you can hit the Start button. I'm first going to start by registering this application. Every application must be registered in order to get a unique tracking ID, which is called an ATN or an application tracking number. I'm going to do so by entering in my email address along with a password that I've created. Now you want to make sure that the email address that you receive or you enter in here is the email address that is going to receive specific notifications regarding this specific application. You can also enter a provider reference. It's not mandatory, but if you're doing multiple applications and you want a quick reference at the top of your application as you're working through to remind you of which application it is you're working on, you can absolutely use the provider reference. So once you've entered in your email address and a password, you can hit register. This is going to launch us into a brand new application. You'll see that a blue information box has popped up, and it's let me know what my ATN or my application tracking number is. And it's also going to send that application tracking number to the email that I used to register. So you don't necessarily need to write it down here. It's going to follow you throughout the application, and it's going to be sent to you via email. So I'm going to click OK to continue. A couple things to notice before we begin. You'll see here again the application tracking number is here. Because I entered in a provider reference, that's going to be listed here. If you need page level help, so you need help on a specific page that you're currently working on of your application, that help is available marked with a blue question mark on the top right hand corner of the screen. If you need help with a specific field, so you're not sure what to enter in for a specific field, you can get help by hovering over the gray question mark located right above that field. Anything with a blue asterisk is required, and you will not be able to save and continue the page that you're working on without completing all of that information. So to begin, we're first going to enter in our enrollment type. I'm going to choose from the drop-down. And like I said earlier in the presentation, we are doing a group today. You'll notice that once I click on group, a blue information box has popped up. This is letting you know that once you have entered in your enrollment type and you've saved and continued this first page, you're not going to be able to go back and change it. This is going to hold true for the provider type that we're going to enter in next. The reason for this is you'll notice that once I entered in the enrollment type, a whole bunch of panels have populated behind this blue information box. The enrollment type and the provider type you choose drives the rest of your application. So it's tailored to those two specific pieces of information. That's why you're not able to go back and change it, because we've already tailored the application for the enrollment type and the provider type that you've chosen. If you do save and continue this first page and later on in the application you realize that you did enter in the wrong enrollment type or provider type, you would need to start a new application. So I'm going to click OK to navigate through that. And next I'm going to enter in my provider type. Again, I'm going to choose from a drop-down menu. And today we're going to be a physician. And again, the same information box is going to come up on the provider type, letting you know that once you save and continue this first page, you can't go back and change your provider type. So again, I'm going to click OK. You must choose an effective date. So the effective date, you can enter in up to a year in the past or up to 90 days in the future. So for today's purposes, I'm going to choose 3/1/2020. I have to move on next to the provider information, and the first piece of information that I'm going to enter is the legal name of my group. If you have a tax name or a doing business name doing business as name, a DBA, you would want to enter that information here, but it's not required. You will be required to supply a valid 10-digit NPI. Now, the system does recognize if a valid NPI is not entered. So for instance, if I was to take away the last digit here and try to navigate on and save this, when I got to the end and tried to save it, it would not let me do that. So you want to make sure that you're entering in that valid 10-digit NPI of the group that you are enrolling. You must enter in a employee identification number or tax ID. And under that, we're going to ask you a series of 3 questions. The first is, are you currently enrolled as a provider? If you choose yes here, a red warning box is going to populate asking if you're actually here to revalidate. If you are enrolled as a provider, the only reason that you would be re-enrolling is to add more service locations, so you would want to choose no here. But if you're actually here to revalidate, this is not the correct avenue to do so. So you would choose yes, and it's going to bring you back to the home page to start over and complete a revalidation. We are not here to revalidate today. This is a new application, so I'm going to click no, and I'm going to change this back to no. It's going to ask if you were previously enrolled as a provider. If you choose yes, a box is going to populate to the right asking for your previous provider identifier with Vermont Medicaid. And lastly, we're going to ask you if you're Medicare enrolled. I'm going to choose yes for today. You'll notice that nothing populates here, but because I chose yes later on in the application, it's going to ask us for that Medicare information. Below those questions is the contact information. You have to supply contact information for whoever you want to receive information regarding this specific application. So this is just the contact information for this application itself. There will be later on in the application different areas to supply contact information for different situations, but for this contact information, it's just for this specific application. So I'm going to enter in my name and my address, and you'll notice that when I tabbed past the zip code, it's starting to process something. Every address that you enter into the provider management module goes through what we call the address doctor. This is the validation from the USPS software for the address that you entered. Now you'll notice that it gave me a suggestion here. What it did is it added the last 4 digits to my zip code. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to accept those changes by simply clicking the entry here. However, if you did not want to accept the changes that it was providing to you, you could simply hit the X. Under that, I must enter in a phone type, so I'm going to choose my work. I'm going to enter in a number here. If you have an extension or a fax number, you can provide that. Now, as I'm entering in my email address, you'll notice that it's not asterisk as it's being required. However, right below the email address is the preferred communication question. You have 2 options here. You can select that you prefer your communication via email or mail. If you choose email, it will require that you enter in an email address here before you can save and continue. We highly recommend that you do choose email, as you are going to get notifications regarding this application much quicker by email than you would via mail. And there are certain circumstances where more information may be requested from you, and there is a timeline associated. So getting those notifications via email is much more helpful than it is trying to get them through mail. So once you've entered in all of the information, you're free to hit save and continue. However, before I do so, I just want to go right back up to the top and mention one more time that you want to make sure that the enrollment type and the provider type is correct, because once I hit save and continue, I'm not going to be able to go back and change those. I have verified it, they are correct, so I'm going to go ahead and go back down and I'm going to hit save to continue. The next panel that populates is the Specialties tab. Before I move on, I just want to note here there are a couple things to mention regarding the application and navigating through each tab. You'll notice that the current tab that I'm working on is marked in yellow. Any tab that I have completed already will be marked in white, and it gives me the opportunity to go back and review the information, make changes if needed. Anything that I've not yet completed is blue, and you'll notice that I'm not able to click through and jump ahead to a certain panel. I have to complete these in order. So I must enter at least one primary specialty before I can move on. I'm going to do so by hitting the Create New button located on the right side. And this is going to bring up a new window. The first thing I'm going to do is check the box yes to make this my primary specialty. Then below that, you'll notice there is a drop down to add a specialty. You are only going to see specialties here that are associated and allowed with the provider type that you chose. So again, as I mentioned before, the enrollment type and the provider type really drive this application. So if you were dropping the specialty box down and you can't find the specialty that you're looking for, you may want to review the provider type you chose because you may have chosen the wrong provider type. So I'm going to choose from the drop down, and today we're just going to be general practice. So the next thing I have to enter in is my taxonomy. And just like the specialty associated to the provider type, the taxonomy that you see and are able to choose from are driven from the specialty that you chose. You're not going to be able to choose from any taxonomy that's out there. It is only the ones that are allowed with this specialty. So again, I'm going to drop the box down, and I'm going to choose general practice. You have to put in an effective date of your specialty. One thing I do want to note is just make sure that the specialty, at least one specialty that you're choosing, does encompass your entire enrollment period that you're asking for. So if you're asking for an effective date 6 months in the past, you want to make sure that you have an effective date of your specialty at least 6 months in the past. Otherwise, you may run into billing and claim issues later on. Once you've entered in all the information, you can hit save. And now you'll notice that I have an entry here with my primary specialty as general practice. Now, if you had multiple specialties, you would simply repeat this process. You can repeat this process as many times as you have active specialties. Once you're done entering all your specialties, you can hit save to continue. The next panel we must complete is the service location panel. This is where you're going to give us address and some additional information regarding your service locations. So again, just like the specialties, everything works the same in the module. You're going to see it's all congruent and it operates the same way, panel to panel. I'm going to make a new service location entry by hitting Create New on the right-hand side. This is going to populate a new box, and it's going to allow me to enter in specifics about my service location. And just like the specialties, we must indicate at least one service location as our primary. So I'm going to make this our primary. I have to put a name for my primary service location here, so I'm just going to name this Group 1. And here's another place where we're going to enter in some contact information. So this is the contact information for this service location specifically. So on the first panel on the General Information tab, we entered in contact information for the application. Now we're entering in contact information for this service location. These may be the same, but they also may be different. You may want somebody else contacted at certain service locations. So just like we did before, I'm going to enter in the name and address for my contact information. And it's going to operate the same way. So once I tab through the zip code, it is going to go through that USPS software again. And just like we did before, I'm simply going to click on the line item here to accept the changes. I'm also going to enter in an email address for this service location. Again, could be the same as before, but it could be a different email address. And I have to enter at least one phone number for the service location. So again, I'm going to do so by hitting Create New. I'm going to enter in the phone type. This is going to be my work. Enter in the phone number. You can add an extension here if you've got one. And then you're going to hit Save, and that's going to create an entry here. If you had multiple phone numbers that you wanted to report, you could simply do so by hitting Create New again, choosing a different phone type. I'll say that this is our fax number, and you can enter in that fax number here. Once you're done entering all the phone numbers, you can scroll down to the service address information. The first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to list your hours of operation. So you're going to do so by clicking the checkbox that's next to hours of operation. That's going to open up a new box for you to add those hours. We're going to hit Create New to make a new entry. And there's a lot of different options in order to be able to report your hours accurately within the provider management module. It breaks it down by every day of the week specifically. You can choose weekdays or weekends. So to begin, I'm just going to choose weekdays, and I'm going to say in the weekday hours, we're open from, we'll say 7 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the evening. And then I'm going to hit Save, and you'll see my entry here. Now, for this test, we are also open on weekends. So I'm going to hit Create New again. And this time I'm going to choose weekends. And I'll say that we've got some limited hours on the weekends. We're open at 10 and we close down at 2 o'clock. And then I'll hit Save. So this is a great way to report accurately this specific service location hours, and that way our members know when your office is going to be open. Below that is a few questions. The first is the service location ADA compliant? Is the service location accessible by public transportation? And what are your after-hours arrangements? When you're not open, what do you direct our members to do? In this case, I'll just say that we direct them to the emergency room. Now, if you have a specific phone service that you want to report, you can do so by entering the phone information below, but again, that's not required as it's not marked by a blue asterisk. Once you've entered in all that information, you can hit Save. And now you'll see that we do have a service location entry listed here, and this is our primary service location. What's great about the module is that you can list all of your service locations on this one application. So if you are a group that has multiple service locations, you can simply add another one by hitting Create New and repeating that process. So I'm going to show you what that looks like, as we know that many groups have multiple service locations. So I'm not going to choose Make My Primary because I've already chosen Group 1 as my primary. I'm going to name this one Group 2, and we're going to go through the same information. We're going to fill out our contact information, and chances are that this could be very different than Group 1, your service location 1, because you may have different people working at different service locations, and you want different people contacted at specific locations. So you're going to want to enter in that contact information again. And I'm going to tab through, and it's going to go through the USPS software, and I'll accept the changes. Enter in my email address again. And remembering I have to list at least one phone number. And below that, I want to check hours of operation again so that I can report the hours of operation at this specific location. And on this location, we're going to say that we're open every day, and we're open from 9 to 5 every day. I'll answer my questions again. Yes, we're ADA compliant. Yes, we're accessible by transportation. And we instruct everyone to go to the emergency room in the event we're not open. So once you're done adding group 2, you can hit save. Now, I do want to just let everybody know I'm naming group 1 and group 2 here just for testing purposes. You would want to actually enter in the billing name for your specific locations. That's the name that you're going to use when you're billing your claims to Vermont Medicaid. So just make sure that you're being really careful about that. You want to list it exactly as how you're going to list it on your claim form. So once you've entered all the service location information for all of your different service locations, you can hit save to continue on the page. The next page of our application is the addresses page. So this is where we're going to request more information regarding certain addresses that we need in order to send you information. So if I scroll down here, the first address that is required is the pay to address. Where do you want us to send payments and remittance advice to? So you have a couple different options here. If the pay to address is the same as your service location 1 or your primary location, then you can check the box here to say same as service location. That's going to copy the information from your primary location. If it's not, however, you would want to leave that unchecked and enter in the information here. I am going to say it's the same as our service location today, so I'm going to use that and I'm going to scroll down. That's going to hold true for the email address and phone number. So if it's the same as your service location, primary location, you can check the box here and it's going to copy it. If it's not, you can definitely feel free to enter that information. You may have different contact information regarding payments than you do as the service location. The next address that will be required is your mail to address. So again, just like the pay to address, you have a couple different options. If it's the same as your primary location, you can drop this box down and say it's the same as your service location. If you had entered a pay to address that was different than your service location, but your pay to is the same as your mail to, you could choose pay to. For today's purposes, I'm going to say that we don't have either one. It's not the same. I don't want our mail to go to either one of those addresses, so I'm going to enter in a new one. I'm going to say this is our mail address. And again, here's some more contact information. So this could be completely different than any of the other contact information that we've had so far. But it's going to operate the same way. You're going to enter in your name, you're going to enter in the address, you're going to tab through that zip code, and it's going to go through the USPS software. And then next, you're going to tell us what your preferred communication for mail is. And again, I want to reiterate that it's much faster to receive notifications from Vermont Medicaid via email than it is mail. So I highly recommend that everybody chooses email, but of course you have the choice. I am going to choose email, and I am going to say that I have this email down below to enter. And then just like the service location address information, you have to have at least one phone number listed. Oops. Now these are the two addresses, the pay to and the mail to are the two addresses that are required on this page in order to continue. You do have the option to give us an address for prior authorizations, remit to, legal, or medical records request. So if any of those addresses are different, so if you wanted to receive prior authorization information and notifications at a different address, you would simply click the plus sign next to the line item, and that's going to expand, and it's going to give you the option to add that address information. Now you'll notice that nothing is asterisk. It doesn't have a blue asterisk next to it. However, if I start adding information into the prior authorization address field, I have to complete everything in order to continue. So you can't just have part of it completed. Once you have completed entering all the necessary addresses in regards to your group, you can hit Save to continue. The next page of our application is regarding capacity. This is where you're going to let us know what is your capacity for seeing Vermont Medicaid patients per specialty. So it does break it down here by specialty. We only have one listed in this application, which is why you're only going to see one here. But if you have multiple specialties listed on your application, you're going to see multiple entries that you need to complete. So what you're going to see is your specialty listed here, and under that is already an entry for capacity. So instead of hitting create new here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this. Anywhere that you see a pencil icon in the module means that that field is editable. So I'm going to click edit, and that's going to bring up a new window. I do want to note that the state's already filled out for you. The county's not listed here. However, it has been filled out for you, so you don't need to click in this. Don't get discouraged if you're not able to select a value here. It's already filled out for you. The only piece of information that you're going to need to tell us is what is the maximum Medicaid member count for this specialty. So we're going to say that we have 100. Once we have 100 members for this specialty, we're at maximum capacity. Then you can hit save, and now you'll notice that the entry has changed and it's included that number here. But again, if you've got multiple specialties, you're going to want to repeat this process for every specialty before you can continue. Once you've entered in all the necessary information, you can hit save to continue at the bottom. Our next panel is the organization panel, and this is where you're just going to give us some more information regarding the organization details for your group. The first thing that must be listed here is the organization type, so you're going to drop this box down and select from the list below. Under that will be your tax classification. And then you have a few options to check boxes if it's applicable to your group. So you have registered with Secretary of State, incorporated, chain affiliated, operated by management company, domestic or foreign owned. So if any of those apply to you, you want to check the box next to them. I am going to say that we're incorporated, and I will be required to enter in the incorporation date before I can continue. And that holds true with the registered for Secretary of State. So if you check the box, you want to make sure that you enter in a business start date here. Once you've entered in all the necessary information on this page, you can hit save to continue. Our next page is the credentials page. If I scroll down, the first thing that I'm going to see on this page is regarding license. Because we are a group, we are not going to be required to enter license information here. Under that will be our Medicare Participation tab. If you remember earlier on in the first page of our application, it asked us if we were Medicare enrolled. I checked yes, and I mentioned that later on in the application, we were going to have a chance to enter in that Medicare information. This is where we're going to do that. So I'm going to start by hitting Create New. And this is going to bring up a new window in order for me to enter in my Medicare information. I do want to be considered for Medicare crossover claims, so I'm going to check that box. I have to enter in my Medicare number, my Medicare type that I'm enrolled in. So it does break it down by Medicare Part A, B, Medicare Advantage, and so on. So if you have multiple enrollments, so if you're enrolled in Medicare Part A and B, you're going to want to make 2 entries here. I'm going to start with Medicare Part A, and I'm going to put in the effective date of my enrollment with them and the end date. And then I'm going to hit save. Now, like I said, I am also Medicare Part B enrolled, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Create New again. I do want to be considered for crossover claims for Medicare Part B as well. So I'm going to enter in my Medicare number again. This time I'm going to choose Medicare Part B, and I'm going to enter in my effective and end date information. Once you've entered in all of the entries for which you are Medicare participating in, you can scroll down. Under that is going to be a question asking if you're enrolled in any other state Medicaid programs. If you choose yes, a new box is going to open up and you will be required to give us the information regarding the other states that you are enrolled in Medicaid. So you just hit create new, you'd let us know the state, the effective and end dates. If you are not, you can simply leave it as no and continue on. If you have an active DEA to report, you're going to hit create new to start a new entry. You're going to enter in your DEA information, the effective date of your DEA, and the end date. And then you can hit save. Now, I wanted to show you that the module is designed and intended to reduce the amount of errors on your application so that it gets submitted right the first time. Now, you'll notice that I did not enter in the correct DEA number. The module knows that a valid DEA is 2 letters followed by 7 digits. So I purposefully entered it in wrong so I could show you that if you do that and it doesn't have in that field what it expects to see, it's going to stop you so that you can review what you have in there. And this is really great in order for you to make sure that the information that you're supplying to us is right and it avoids any delays in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and simply update this to make sure that I am putting in the correct DEA number, and then I can hit save and it will continue on. Once you've entered in all the necessary information on the Credentials tab, you can hit save to continue. The next page of our application is the provider type page, and listed on this page is CLIA information. So if you have an active CLIA that you need to report for your group, you would want to make sure that you hit create new. And this will give you an opportunity to enter in your CLIA number, your CLIA type, so you can choose from the drop down here. We're going to say this is a regular CLIA, the effective date of your CLIA, and the end date. Once you hit save, that information is saved here. That's the only piece of information we need on this tab, so you can hit save to continue. The next page of our application is the Other page. This captures a little bit more information regarding your group. First is languages. So in order to enter in a new language that's spoken within your group, you can hit Create New. And you're simply going to choose from the drop-down box. I'm going to choose English first. I'm going to hit Save in order to save that entry. But if you had multiple languages spoken for your group, you could simply repeat the process. So I'm going to hit Create New again. Because we're in Vermont, we're close to Canada, I'm going to choose that we also speak French, and I'm going to hit save. Below the languages is any certifications that you hold you can report to us. So if you, this is not a required field, but if you do hold certifications, you would want to simply hit Create New. You can choose the specialty that the certification is associated to, the type, certification number, and effective and end dates. Under that will be an option to provide us a website for your group if applicable. Again, it's not required. However, if you do want to make an entry here, you just want to make sure that it starts with HTTP or HTTPS in order for it to be a valid URL. Under the website information will be the malpractice information. This is required, so we want to make sure that we're filling out this accurately. So I'm going to start by hitting Create New on the right-hand side. I'm going to choose from the drop-down for the type of carrier. We're going to say this is professional liability, the name of the carrier, the policy number, the aggregate, and the per occurrence amount. Now, you'll notice that I did not enter any special characters in these coverage amounts. The module does not expect to see dollar signs or commas or periods. If you enter that in, it's going to stop you from being able to save this and say it's invalid. So you want to just make sure that you're sticking to digits only. It also does recognize that the aggregate should be greater than the per occurrence. So if for some reason you accidentally interchanged those, it wouldn't allow you to save and continue. You want to enter in the effective date and the end date of your policy. And then you can hit save to continue. Under the malpractice information will be a question regarding if you currently have or within the last 10 years been involved in a malpractice suit or a claim. If you choose yes here, a new box is going to open up and you will be required to give us more information regarding that malpractice suit or claim. You're going to be required to enter in the patient name, the policy number, and your status in the case or the claim, whichever is applicable. If you choose no here, that box is removed and you can continue on. Once you've entered in all the necessary information, you can hit save to continue. The next page of our application is the EFT page, or electronic funds transfer. You'll notice that when you enter this page, there's just one question here, and it's asking if you want to enroll for electronic funds transfer. It defaults to no. However, we do highly recommend that everybody choose yes and enter in banking information in order for us to direct deposit your payments from Vermont Medicaid. For obvious reasons, you're going to receive your payment much quicker via electronic than you would on a paper check. So we're going to choose yes, and you're going to notice that a whole bunch of information populates below that. The first thing that populates is the provider information and the provider identifier information. This is grayed out because it's taking the information from earlier on in your application to populate these fields. You don't need to enter in anything else under provider information or provider identifier information. You have the option to enter in information regarding contact, agent, agency, or retail pharmacy. However, it is not required. If you do have information to report under these fields, you would simply check the plus sign, which is going to open up the box and allow you to enter in that information. What will be required here is the financial institution information. So I'm going to start by entering in the bank name. You are not required to enter in the address information, so I'm going to leave that blank. You do have to enter in the routing number, the type of account, so is this a checking or a savings, and then the account number. You have the option to have this linked via your tax ID or NPI. Whichever you choose, you can toggle back and forth, will be populated down below for you. That's the last piece of information that we need for this field or this page. Under submission, you do not need to include anything with your submission. We do not require a voided check, so you'll see that no additional documentation has been required. Once you're done entering all this information, you can hit save to continue. Our next tab is the Disclosures tab. So this is where you're going to give us more information regarding the specific provider as well as any disclosing entities. So it's very important that you first read over the Provider Privacy Act notice statement and the information regarding ownership and control interest and disclosure forms. You'll notice below there's a set of 5 forms that you're going to need to complete before you can continue on. You'll notice that all the statuses right now are in new, and we need all of those statuses to say complete in order to be able to save and continue on this page. The first thing that you're going to need to do is fill out the provider self-disclosure form. I'm going to do so by hitting Create New on that line item. This is going to bring up a new blank provider self-disclosure form. At the top is the legal name and the tax ID that are populated from earlier on in the application. And below that is a set of questions that you're going to need to answer. It is very important that you read over each question very carefully in order to understand how to answer the question. You'll notice that all the questions are populated to yes, so you don't want to leave them there. You want to make sure that you're reading every question carefully. As I go through these questions, if I choose no, you'll see that the box below that question has disappeared. That's because if you choose yes as an answer to this question, you're going to be required to give us more information related to the question in this box. I'm familiar with the questions, so I'm going to go through and answer the questions accordingly as you do the same. Once you get down to the general section, you're going to answer a question first, And then below that is going to be contact information for auditing purposes. So again, this is another place that we're entering in contact information. And this contact information could be different than any other contact information that you have entered previously in this application. We want to know who to contact in the event of an audit, and we need more information. I'm going to tab through that address, and just like every other address in the module, it's going to go through the USPS software in order to validate. I'm going to select it to continue. Under that, I'm going to enter in a phone type and the phone number. And then below that contact information will be a place to put another address, which is the physical location of your records. So again, maybe different than where you have your service location or other addresses that you've entered in. We want to know where your physical records are kept. And it will note here that a P.O. box will not be accepted, as we don't expect that you are going to have your physical records at a P.O. box. So you want to make sure you enter in the address, tab through, let it go through the USPS software. Under that, a phone number for the record. So whoever keeps track of your records, who do we contact? Under that address will be a question that I want to point out. This question says, in accordance with 32 VSA, I declare under the pains and penalties of perjury that I'm currently not in good standing with any and all taxes due. So if you leave that as yes, what you're telling Vermont Medicaid is that you're not in good standing with your taxes. So this is why it's very important to read each question very carefully. I'm going to choose no, letting them know that I am in good standing with my taxes. There'll be a couple more questions to answer under that one question. And once you've gotten to the bottom, answered all the questions, and filled out the necessary address information, you can hit save. Now you'll see that my provider self-disclosure line item has a status of completed. For obvious reasons, I'm only able to enter in one provider self-disclosure, so you'll notice that the Create New button has now been grayed out. I can't click it again. So just like that self-disclosure, I'm going to have to go through and I'm going to have to action every other disclosure form in order to get them into a completed status. So I'm going to start with subcontractor disclosure, and I'm going to hit Create New. Now, what's important here is to make sure that you're answering the first question appropriately on these disclosing entity forms. So a subcontractor disclosure form collects information of any subcontractor or individual with which the provider has had any business transaction totaling more than $25,000 during the preceding 12-month period. The first question asks that very question. Did you have any business transaction totaling more than $25,000 in the preceding 12-month period? It automatically defaults to yes, and you'll notice all this information is below that you're going to have to fill out. If the answer is no, and you choose no, all of that information disappears and you're done with this form. So I'm going to leave it as no today, and I'm going to hit save to show you that now I'm in a completed status. You'll notice, though, that the box has not been grayed out for Create New, and that's because I could have multiple subcontractor disclosures to enter, as I could have multiple subcontractors. I'm going to go down to ownership and control interest, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit Create New on the line item. And I am a group, so I am going to assume that I have somebody who has ownership and control interest in my group. So I'm going to leave the first question as yes. Is there an entity, an individual, or a corporation with an ownership or controlling interest in the disclosing entity as described above? Now, again, that is 5% or more in the provider. Right below that, I'm going to choose, is this an entity, an individual, or corporation? I'm going to say it's an individual who has 100% interest in this group. I have to enter in the information for that individual, including their social security number. Now, the reason for this is because we screen every disclosing entity in your application, just like we would a provider. I'm going to enter in the birth date. I'm going to enter in the address information for this individual. Again, tabbing through the zip code, it's going to go through the USPS software. I do have to provide an email address, so this is one place that an email address is going to be required for this individual. And an effective date. When did this person or this individual take ownership or controlling interest in this group? Just like we did on the provider self-disclosure form, there is going to be a series of questions regarding this individual. Again, it's very important that you read each question very carefully. You'll notice that the first question and all the questions below are defaulted to yes. There's also a box for more information under each one of these questions. If the answer is yes, you're going to need to hit Create New and give us more information regarding that question. If I hit No, that box disappears and I can move on. So again, I know these questions. I'm going to go ahead and answer them appropriately. Once you've gotten to the bottom and answered all of the questions, you can hit Save to continue. And again, now you'll notice that my line item for ownership and control interest is completed. But if I had multiple ownership and control interest to report, meaning that more than one individual or corporation has 5% or more interest in my group, I would want to hit Create New again and report the next person or corporation. Under that will be Managing Employees, so I'm going to hit Create New again. This is going to operate the exact same way. You're going to make sure you read over the description of what a managing employee is. You're going to answer the first question. Is there any managing employee or entity associated with the provider's organization? If yes, fill out all the information below on the form. If no, simply click No, and you can move on. And lastly, I'm going to do the same with business transactions. I'm going to hit Create New on the line item. I'm going to read over what a business transaction means, and I'm going to answer the first question. For today's purposes, I'm answering no, just for time, but of course you want to make sure that you are answering each one of these questions appropriately and filling out any disclosing entity that you may have related to your group. Once I hit save on the last one, you'll notice that all of my statuses are now completed and I can move on. I do just want to show you that if for any reason you need to go back and you need to look at the information that you've entered, so maybe you're at the end of your application and somebody else needs to review the application before it's submitted, you can look at your disclosing entity form by simply clicking it anywhere in the line item. So if I wanted to see my ownership and control interest form, I'm just going to click anywhere in the line item, and that's going to bring that up for me. If I had multiple listed here, you would see multiples down here. It does have the option to view it or edit it, so I can hit the little pencil icon. And that's going to bring up the form that I completed for this disclosing entity, and I have the option to review it or to make changes as needed. I don't need to make any changes, so I'm simply going to close out of it. Once you've entered in all the necessary disclosing entities as described in each one of the forms, you can hit Save to continue. The next page of our application is the attachments page. This is where you're going to provide documentation to support the information that you gave us earlier on in your application. So if I scroll down, the first thing that I'm going to see is my provider type and specialty listed here, and what is required to complete this application. So what's going to be required based upon the provider type and specialty and the information I provided in the application is an IRS W-9 form, proof of professional liability insurance, that's our malpractice information we entered, and our CLIA certificate because we entered in that we have a CLIA. So if we didn't have a CLIA and didn't enter that information, this would not be a requirement. It's a requirement because we entered the information into that field. You'll notice that all of the requirements right now say no, and we need to get these to say yes in order to move on for this page. So the way that we do that is we scroll down to the attachment details. You'll notice that this is now blank, but we want to make entries associated to each one of these attachment types in order to continue. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Create New under Attachment Details. And I'm going to first select the transmission method for this attachment. If you drop the box down, there's a few different ways that you're able to get your documentation to DXC Technology. The way that we recommend is by electronic. Electronic only means that you've got this attachment loaded on your computer and you are going to attach it right here and right now to this application. This is what we recommend. If you choose any other method, say you wanted to mail us the documents or you wanted to email or fax them to us, you can continue on from this page, you can submit your application, but your application is going to be in a holding status, waiting for us to receive those documents, process those documents, and attach them to your application. If you choose electronic only and you upload them, once you submit your application is automatically going through our screening service and is going to be queued up for a clerk to review and to process your application. So again, we highly recommend that you do electronic only, but if you don't have the option, you can certainly mail, email, or fax these to us. So I'm going to choose electronic only for today. And then I have to choose the attachment type. So I want the attachment types to match what we have up here. So the first thing I'm going to choose is the IRS W-9 form. I'm going to choose that from the drop-down list. Now, because I'm choosing electronic only, I want to upload my files right to this application. So I'm going to hit Select Files. I'm going to locate the file on my computer. So I'm going to select my IRS W. And I'm going to hit Open. Now, just that quick, this file has been uploaded and I can hit Save to add it to my application. So what you're going to see now is an entry under Attachment Details, and the requirement is now changed from No to Yes. I want to reiterate that just because the requirement has been met does not mean that you've attached it to the application. If you chose electronic only and uploaded the attachment, then it's here attached. But this will still say yes if you chose mail. You just want to make sure that you actually get the documents mailed out to DXC Technology. So I'm going to repeat the process with my proof of professional liability insurance. So I'm going to hit Create New again. I'm going to select my transmission method. I'm going to choose the attachment type. This time is proof of professional liability insurance. And I'm going to go find my file on my computer. I'm going to hit Save because it's now done loading. And now that requirement has been met. Lastly, I'm going to go grab my CLIA certificate. So I'm going to hit Create New again. I'm going to select electronic only so I can upload it. And this time I'm going to choose CLIA certificate. I will go find the file on my computer and hit Save. And now all the requirements have been met for my documentation. I have uploaded all of them. Once all of the requirements have been met, you can hit Save and Continue on the attachment page. The last page of our application is the Agreement Submit page. There's lots of important information on this page, so you want to make sure that you're reading over everything very carefully. The first up is the Terms of Agreement, and what you'll notice here is that the information has been pre-populated for you based upon the information that you entered earlier on in the application. If any of this information is incorrect, looks wrong to you, you want to make sure that you navigate back to that page or that panel in order to update the information before you continue on. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to review any special provisions related to your specific provider type. You're going to do so by clicking the link here. It's going to bring you to our vtmedicaid.com website, and you just want to make sure that you're reviewing in case there's any special provisions for your provider type. Once you've done so, you can hit the Proceed button that's located on the bottom right-hand corner. Once you hit Proceed, you're going to notice that down below is the General Provider Agreement. You want to make sure that you're reading over this General Provider Agreement very carefully. You have the option to download it to your computer, or you can also print it if it's easier for you or you want to keep a copy. Once you've read over the agreement, you can accept the terms of the agreement by hitting the I agree button. It's going to bring up a blue information box that's going to make you confirm your choice of yes, that you agree to the terms and the conditions of the provider agreement. Once you do so, below that will be an area for you to enter in your portal registration details. This is the information of the person that you want to receive an invitation to the provider portal in order to maintain the information for this group practice. So you want to make sure that you're entering in the information appropriately for that specific person. You're going to be required to enter in their name, their last four of their social security number, their email address, and their birth date. And you want to make sure that this information is correct because this information they will need to use in order to verify that registration once they receive it. So once you've entered in all of that information, you can move on to signing this application electronically. You're going to do so by clicking the I accept button. You're going to enter in your last name and your first name. If you have additional comments you want to provide to DXC Technology or the state of Vermont, you can enter that here. Then you're going to need to provide us an email address to receive a verification code in order to submit this application. So you want to make sure that this email address is one that you can access easily, because once you've entered in the email ID and then hit request verification code, the code that will be sent to this email you will have 10 minutes to use and enter in here before it expires. Now, at this point, if you're not ready to submit your application, you do have the option to finish it later. So you can hit finish later. It's going to save all of your progress, and you can use your application tracking number and the password that you use to register this application to resume it at a later time. Once you start an application, you have 30 days to complete that application. I am ready to submit it, so I'm going to go ahead and hit request verification code. And it's going to let me know that a verification code has been sent to the address above. I've received the verification code email already. It comes very quickly. So you're going to want to enter in the verification code from that email exactly as it is listed in the email. So for instance, in my verification code, all of the letters are capitalized. You want to make sure that you capitalize them when you enter it here. If you use lowercase when it expects to see a capital, it's not going to accept that as a valid verification code. Once you've entered in your verification code, you're now ready to submit your application, and you can do so by simply hitting submit at the bottom right-hand corner. A blue information box is going to populate, making sure that you actually do want to submit your application, so we're going to hit yes again. Once you do that, it's going to process through, and then a confirmation page is going to populate letting you know that you have successfully submitted your provider enrollment application to DXC Technology and the state of Vermont. You'll see your tracking number here. If in the attachment page you chose to send us your documentation via mail or email or fax, any way other than electronic, you're going to want to access this cover sheet. This cover sheet you can include with your documentation so that when DXC receives your information, we know exactly which application to attach it to. If you have any questions or concerns after you've submitted your application, the provider enrollment team is ready to answer any of those questions, and you can send that question to either the provider enrollment mailbox at vtproviderenrollment@dxc.com, or you can contact us via phone at the number listed here. Thank you for listening to this training video today. Have a wonderful day.